Welcome everybody to the Wednesday week. Not only the most informative, knowledgeable, and probably the highest percent by ABV Sheffield Wednesday fan podcast, but we're also true connoisseurs of pre-match food. You don't believe me? Allow me to elucidate. Obviously, you, as a listener to the podcast, are aware that we are proudly sponsored by the Riverside Cafe on Catch Bar Lane, which offers a selection of beverages to satisfy every taste within a stone's throw of the South Stand. But did you also know that their food offerings, both on match day and through the week, have been described as lovely stuff by none other than Shakin' Stevens? My name's Eddie, and I'm particularly partial to what I can only describe as their godly fish finger sandwich, served in possibly Sheffield's best bread cake, which I like to pair with 6 pints of Farmer's Blonde. With me on the line tonight, we've got James. James, good evening, sir.
That was possibly the strangest starts to this podcast we've ever had, and we've had some fucking strange starts to this podcast.
I like to think of myself as the heir to Lord Hillsborough's slightly weird meanderings. James, what do you like to tickle your taste buds with when you're in the Riverside?
I was on the blueberry ale on what was it, Wednesday night? All the days are merging into one. Wednesday night blueberry ale. Yeah, I've not eaten in there for ages because I'm one of those strange people, unlike the majority of the world, that when I've had a couple of beers, I'm the opposite. I don't get hungry at all. It's like food. I'm just not interested. I just want more beer.
It's like that thing where, you know, you can survive on Guinness. If you drink enough of it, it contains all the nutrients that you need. That's effectively how you're living your life right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, having spent a bit of time in New York this summer where the beers are like, you know, 8, 9, 10%, I mean, they're like a meal in themselves. You don't need food, really. I mean, you find me some actual scientific evidence that we need food. Go on.
Well, I've no science behind it. All I know is that if you go to New York and don't indulge yourself in the food that's available in that great city, then you're missing out. But that's probably one for another time. That's not for the Sheffield Hopcast. That's probably for the Sheffield Foodcast. I might need a podcast specialist to help flesh that one out a little bit. Anyway, moving on. We've also got tonight's trio. There's only 3 of us tonight. On tonight's trio, myself, James, and of course, Sir Daniel of Fudgington. Despite a decade of being a soft Southern Ponds, Fudgy, come on, tell me you've still got a hankering for some proper Yorkshire pre-match scran. If you're in the Riverside, what are you ordering?
This is going to be one of those very few times when I sound less middle class than yourself, Eddie, because when I go to the Riverside at a game at Hillsborough, I can't be arsed with the queue. It winds me up, and just that pushing round. I'm not very good with that small amount of space up there. And I think, do you know what? I'm going to circumnavigate this. So I go to the cafe bit downstairs and grab a couple of bottles of Corona or Peroni that they've got in the chiller cabinet. Now, with it being a cafe, you know, I cast my eye on a lovely lattice, or if I'm in the mood for something savoury, a cranberry and jam sandwich, like, you know what I mean? Brie and cranberry, yeah, brie and cranberry, little baguette there, and I've just realised I am the naffest person in Yorkshire at that point when that happened.
That's legitimately, when I did it like kind of tongue-in-cheek, ironically, you're a soft Southern Pond, so, you know, it's changed you. You're not as hard as you used to be. And you've literally just come up with, I don't want to queue, and I'd like a brie and cranberry, please. Do you have a panini?
Fudge. Was the point of that you were saying if the queue upstairs is too bad that you go to the little cafe downstairs and just buy some bottles? Is that what you were getting at? I'm really pleased that 2 years of us playing the ad saying new outside bar now open really made an impact on you. Great to know.
Yeah. Well, I can't be asked queuing then. Everybody's because the outside bar is so fabulous. Of course, it's normally really busy, and I don't want to get involved with all that. You know what I mean? I'm being such a celebrity. You know what I mean? I don't want to get badgered.
I think everybody has gone through that same thought process, including Chris, because that's why now at the outside bar you can get 2-pint pots, which it might not halve the queue at the bar, but it doubles the time that you need to spend away from the bar.
Peeing.
So, peeing, yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, last night, let's not get onto the Millwall match yet, but last night I had to go for a pee 3 times during the match. That might be a personal record for me. Normally I can hold it quite well, but... in any case, I think it's fair to say that we enjoy our pre-match in the Riverside Cafe on Catch Bar Lane. We want our post-matches to be more cheerful than they have been so far this season. With that in mind, tonight we're going to review not 1, not 2, but 3 Owls games, and hopefully some of those will have given us at least some hope that post-match is as much fun as pre-match. So without further ado, let's get into it. We'll start up with the Milk Cup. The Milk Cup's the secondary cup competition in this country. It will always be the Milk Cup. So Wednesday had a trip onto Wearside to take on the latest big club to fall foul of relegation to League One. We know what that feels like. We went away to Sunderland. It was Thursday night. It was live on Sky. Fudgy, did you manage to catch the game on iFollow or other streams that were 100% legitimate?
Yeah, I followed it on a 100% legitimate stream on Thursday, so that's nice, isn't it? But I tell you what, I was actually most surprised at was one, I was paying for for what I was seeing. 2, that we managed to play defensive against one of the worst clubs currently in free fall, and 3, Chris Maguire. I wonder what happened to him. It's nice to see him, isn't it?
Oh, I was going to ask you about Chris Maguire. I was thinking, I bet Fudgy was reminiscing the rants that you had about Chris Maguire back in the day.
As soon as I saw him, I went, look at him, fat Derby County reserve. As soon as I clapped eyes on him, as soon as I saw it, I went, oh, that's nice. It's nice that he's there. But in terms of the game, it was a weird one for me because I thought we were very, we played as well as the opposition would allow, if that makes sense. Now, I think if Sunderland had a striker that could finish his dinner, we'd have struggled a bit. I don't think we were spectacular at all, and we scored quite fortuitously with a big long hoof up the park, and after that Sunderland kind of capitulated a little bit. But if that what was the guy's name up front? Was it Ndai or something like that? Is he Italian or something? The kid they had up front for Sunderland. He did a lot of running around. He was trying hard. It reminded me a lot of Lee Peacock.
Are you talking about their Irish striker, Onyen? Who it's basically he's basically called Onion.
Onion, that's him. Yeah,
but he's an Irish onion. He's Onion. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Somebody said onion with hiccups, and they're gone, yeah, that's a good name. Yeah, let's have with that. So yeah, he didn't seem to. He ran around a lot, blustered a lot, caused a bit of problems, but he didn't seem to actually be any good at actually putting the ball in the net. So we scored quite fortuitously. Rode out a couple of times. We had a couple of good saves and that type of thing. But it was. I thought Adam Reach particularly covered a lot of ground. I thought we regressed into that thing that we do when we're not on top, and Barry Bannon just kind of takes a step back and just tries to start spraying Hollywood balls around the park. But we also did a unique thing that I've not seen us do for a couple of years, which is quite opposite of the word unique. But we did this thing where when the goalkeeper had the ball, Bannon would drop deep and the 2 centre-backs would kind of part. They would separate onto the edge of 18, which pass it straight to Bannon, and then we'd have this continental Spanish style build-up, which was worked a lot better for us against Millwall last night. But against Sunderland, it was just, what we're doing. Why are we? I feel that we gave them a little bit too much respect, and I agree. Given the start of the season, the start to the season we had, there deserves to be a modicum of trepidation, but I think we just gave them a little bit too much respect, if I'm honest.
I think if you're facing a team with two absolutely legendary shithouses in the form of Maguire and Cattermole, I think anything you can do to disrupt their satanic way of playing the game can only be a bonus. So actually, I think that we probably confounded them a bit with just going randomly continental, because what they were expecting was, blood and thunder, run into the channels, etc. And we just started, we would just go possession for the first 60 minutes, and it took all of the steam out of them, especially a thug like Cattermole, who was completely achieved nothing, did nothing, and I was quite worried about him because like I say, legendary shithouse, and I thought he would be the one that would either draw a foul that would leave us with 10 men, or he would seriously injure somebody.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I think he didn't really do much, did he? He was somebody that I wasn't concerned about, but I thought he would pose the most threat. Not being Chris Maguire's biggest fan, didn't give him the time of day in the back of my mind once I saw him was playing. But yeah, I thought Cattermole's played in the Premier League, and I thought this guy's gonna be a little bit classy. But then I think what he's realised is that because League One is so mind-numbingly terrible, he's going to be much of a spectator. And it was. I felt sorry for who was it played the first half? It was Alex Hunt, wasn't it, in the middle of the park with Bannon? I felt for him, if I'm honest. This was his debut. This was the first time he was going to kick a ball for us, and I felt that he was just a spectator. He was just sat he was sat watching Bannon spread these little triangles around, or just literally looking up and watching it sail over his head, and then back again, and then back again. And I think the lad that came on in the second half, whose name just escapes me right now,
Matt Penny.
Yeah, that's it. I nearly said Dave Penny then, wasn't the old Doncaster manager?
He was. Hey, that would have put the shitters up Cattermole, 100%.
They're about the same age, aren't they, him and Cattermole?
I thought he had a bit more of an impact, as it were. Not that he set the world on fire, but he got a few more touches than poor Hunt did. You know what I mean?
It kind of felt a little bit like Hunt was just a little bit overawed by the whole occasion. He was a little bit late into a couple of challenges that looked really clumsy when you watch them, and you just kind of thought that maybe this guy's just trying a little bit too hard with it being his debut. Not that he did anything particularly wrong or anything. I think a more experienced player, the ref might have given them a real telling off for a couple of those challenges, but I think the ref just kind of thought, it's his debut, fair play, the lad's just kind of getting used to the speed of professional football and all that kind of stuff. No, I agree with everything you say. I think it was summed up pretty well afterwards by the kind of the media commentary, if you like, just saying Sunderland probably should have got a goal or two in that first 20 minutes. It'd have been a very different game. We got a sneaky goal and Sunderland just didn't have any response at all. But it did seem like there was more talk on social media afterwards about what Mick McCarthy had to say about things than anything to do with the game. I don't know what that's all about.
So why do you enlighten us, James? What was being said after the match?
Well, obviously by this point, I was well gone. I could barely see the TV, let alone hear what was being said. But yeah, apparently Mick McCarthy was being his usual kind of, tell it like it is, lad. That's what I do. That kind of, just laying it on the line. I didn't really hear anything.
Professional bluff Yorkshireman.
Yeah, as I staggered to the tram from the New Barrack Tavern where I'd watched the game, trying to desperately trying to focus on my phone and read some tweets. I saw quite a lot of people talking about Mick McCarthy's, is it nail on head there, McCarthy?
I do enjoy the fact that I think both you and Barnsley Mick are from Barnsley, and you have to put an accent on to do an impression of him. That's quite fun for me, that, James. I feel like
I break into Barnsley every so often, but it is quite rare.
With the sad demise of Barry Chuckle, basically Mick McCarthy's now the most Barnsley person we've got left. So
Barry Chuckle was from Rotherham. Come on.
There They're all the same. They're just all small towns in Sheffield, aren't they?
That's fine for you living in York or North Yorkshire, same place, isn't it?
It is technically, yeah. Anyway, so the game finished 2-0. We're through to the next round, so that's great news. And I think one of the things that stood out to me a little bit with that game is that we took it kind of semi-seriously. We didn't put out an entire second team in the way that we have done under Carlos for the last couple of seasons. It was a semi-serious attempt, and maybe we'll see when it comes to the Wolves game what happens as far as team selection, whether we're going to use it as an excuse to give more playing time to some of the younger players, or whether we're really going to give it a go to try and get further into the competition. So yeah, that's all to come. That was Thursday night, and it was a really quick turnaround for the squad, wasn't it? Because they came back from the far northeast, the frozen tundra of Sunderland, and then literally as soon as they got off the coach and had a shower, they were back on again and heading down to the nation's capital, because on Sunday we had the league tilt at a place that has been quite a happy hunting ground for us in recent years. But James, it didn't really turn out that way this time against Brentford, did it?
No, it was shit, mate. It was awful. It was it was really, really, really poor, and I was quite angry afterwards, because it was Brentford are not a bad team, right? And there's no mistaking that. We all said it was going to be a really hard game, and I went there kind of braced for us to lose. Thought, if expect us to lose, and anything above that is going to be a bonus. The thing is that we didn't really even turn up. Brentford barely had to get out of first gear, and they just strolled to victory. We looked, and I was really worried afterwards, because I thought, right, what's going on at the moment? Because either it looked like we didn't have a game plan, we looked like we just didn't have a clue what anyone was supposed to be doing or anything, which means either we've got a coach who is just not bothering coming up with a game plan, which is worrying, or we've got a coach that's coming up with a game plan and then players going out and just going, fuck it, we're not going to bother with it, which is also worrying. So I just kind of came away thinking, I can't see any way of seeing anything remotely positive or anything from that game that's not really worrying. But thankfully afterwards, God bless the British transport system, every train from London to Sheffield had been cancelled, so concerns about the managerial style of Jos Luhukay went out the window as 2,000 Wednesday fans fought to get home. So thankfully I had a little bit of time to reflect on the very long journey back. And it was just rubbish. It was really rubbish, and there was, I can't find very much of it from it at all to be positive about. I don't think there was anyone that I thought played particularly great. It kind of started badly with Reach getting injured in the warm up, and it's like, God, it felt so last season that, and then so did the performance. It was just. It was crap from kind of start to end, really, and I struggled to cut with anything positive from it. So I'm not even going to bother and just say, right, okay, fine. It was, hopefully that's the low point now. We've hit the low point in game number 3 of the season, and we climb away from that now, because if we turn in performances like that this season, we ain't going to get anywhere. We're really not. Did either of you two watch any of it? I don't know if it was different watching it. That away end's not great for actually seeing how the game's unfolded, because you're pretty much on pitch level wherever abouts you are in that away end. So it'd be interesting to see if anyone did watch it as to whether it was different, kind of seeing it from a proper angle.
I think you've absolutely you've summed up the quality of the performance, and whether you were on the third row of that terrace, you didn't see any different from anyone who was watching it at home. It was pretty diabolical. The most worrying thing for me is that on paper that looked like we were playing our strongest team, playing a system that they were familiar with, and they literally achieved nothing, created nothing, could prevent nothing. It was a complete whiff tactically and in execution. I know obviously we've had another game since then, but let's go back to Sunday, Fudge. How did that feel? The reaction on social media and amongst the Wednesday fans was almost mutinous. People were saying Lukai's doing his best to get fired with a setup like that and a performance like that.
I agree with you. 90% of the way. I think what what we're doing though is kind of selling Brentford a little short. I mean, they've had a good start to the season, and they've had a, you know, I remember watching. There's a the program, the Premiership years. There's a Championship version. It was on last night, and it was it was a version from. What was the one disco season for us? 2014, 2015. I think Norwich went up with Alex Neil that year. And it was the year that Brentford were pushing the playoffs. And they were excellent that year. They were very good. And then since that, they've kind of fell away and they sold off their best players in people like Elphick and Jota. And so they've kind of come back this year, and they're a very organised unit. They're a very good team. And what they did was absolutely kill our game dead. Now, my biggest concern, like you guys were saying, was the fact that we create nothing. If it doesn't go our way, it's that reminiscent of under Carlos, where we go, we don't have anywhere else to go from here. We've played our card now, and well, enjoy the ride, kids. It's going to be a bumpy one. Do you know what I mean? It just seemed to like, well, that's your lot, lads. Thanks for playing. Yeah. See you later. We didn't have anywhere to go. And that's what's worrying. So for a team to suss us out from minute one, well, where do we go from there? What do we do?
Well, for years, of course, before Mr. Chansiri came in, and we started getting players of a quality that the fans demanded, and the requirement to get promoted demanded. I think we experienced that all too often, wasn't it? Where we had a plan A, and if plan A didn't work, we didn't have any kind of strength on the bench or any diversity on the bench that could enable us to change a game. And it it felt an awful lot like that, is that there was no plan B. And that to me comes from not being properly prepared, because we've now got the players. We've got the players who can play in different systems. They're versatile. That we've got a great diversity, especially in terms of strikers. Players who can be thrown on to change a game. And it looked like we were really, really devoid of ideas. And that to me is the real shame, because we've incurred an awful lot of financial pressure building a squad that can compete, and we've got those building blocks that let's be honest. Yeah, I think Brentford were an impressive side, and I think they're going to be. The same Brentford that they have been for the majority of the last few years, which has been very, very difficult to beat and challenging for the playoffs. So,
but that wasn't Brentford being great. That wasn't Brentford being great. I think Brentford have played better than that. I agree. I agree with the lion's share of what's just been said. One thing I disagree with is when you say it looks like we didn't have a plan B. My issue with Sunday is it looked like we didn't have a plan A. We just seemed to go out. We just and it was just like just kick it. Let's see what happens. And there was some real fundamental awful things happening, like. Ash Baker just left so utterly isolated on that wing, and whether or not you want to say, well, surely it's Forestier's wing, it's his job to get back and help him out. Whoever it is, at times he got two players that he was trying to take on. With obviously because he's playing as a wing back, there's no one behind him, there was no one in front of him, and the lad's just kind of just throwing his arms up in the air like, what on earth am I supposed to do in this situation? It was like the real basic stuff we were just getting wrong, and we were getting wrong as a team. As a team, we lost that game. There was no individual that we're going to blame for it. We as a team lost that game, and that's, in my book, that's the worst way of losing a game. If you lose to some individual mistakes, you can at least just blame someone and just go, well, everyone else played well. We lost that game because as a team we just didn't do anything. And like I say, we've just got to hope to God that is the low point now, because if we turn out more performances like that this season, we're going to have real problems.
Yeah, that is it's relegation form, isn't it? Games like that are what you see from teams that are going to struggle all season, and it was absolutely vital, and it remains absolutely vital that we don't turn in performances like that seem ill prepared, but equally very, very badly executed from a team that is lacking in confidence, lacking in team spirit, all of the things we saw on Sunday. It was very, very frustrating. And it left us really staring down the barrel of being in the relegation zone, albeit at the stupidly early part of the season. And what do we not look at this time of the year, James?
Well, I think the published league tables are this time of the season, but you know what? I think we were still 4 points off the playoffs on Sunday, which is not the end of the world.
Of course. So there you go, and that's how quickly it can swing. So it was a hectic week. It's early in the season. We expect the players to be able to recover from that. But finally, we'd gone Thursday, we'd gone Sunday. It came back to Wednesday. It was all back to Hillsborough for a game that, because of the change in the TV rights this week, all of the EFL games were being shown midweek live on Sky. So 23,000 people turned out. Okay, I understand that some of those are being counted anyway because they're season ticket holders. But 23,000 tickets.
Excuse me, sorry about that.
Were sold, which actually. And looking around, and especially second half, it felt and seemed and looked like quite a respectable attendance given recent form. And we took on Millwall, who credit to the 300 or 400 of their fans that turned out on a Tuesday night when they could have quite happily stayed at home eating, pie and mash, jellied eels, talking to pearly kings and queens, whatever it is that they do down there. You know what? We're off the mark. That's the most important thing. We can talk about the performance, and we will. The single most important thing that we got out of Wednesday night was 3 points in the bag. Actually leading in a game, holding on to a lead and closing it out. That was all we could ever have wanted and expected. And that's what delivered. Honestly,
Amen.
Go on.
Eddie, I think you're missing out the second most important thing about last night.
What was that?
We have broken a 4-year hoodoo of not being able to win on a Wednesday night. Given that the name Wednesday...
That's true, isn't it? Yeah.
...is in our title.
Yeah.
We'd not won on a Wednesday night apart from beating, I think it was Blackpool 4 years ago. We beat them on a Wednesday night. We've not won on a Wednesday ever since. And we managed to break that hoodoo. And played well as well. So, that also deserves a doff of the cap. Well done, the lads. Finally, actual Sheffield, actual Wednesday.
Yeah, and you know what? So we were in the Riverside before the match, and we checked out the team sheet as it came out, an hour before kickoff. And I think it's fair to say there were some raised eyebrows in terms of the decisions that were made. Given that, like we just said, against Brentford, we put out nominally our strongest side, it was sweeping changes, wasn't it, James, as far as the lineup was concerned?
Yeah, you're right, and I was also kind of keeping an eye on Twitter as well, and there were a lot of people just saying, has he lost his mind completely? And I think I was one of the few that was just kind of saying, well, do you know what? Why not? Because it can't be any worse. If he said some interesting stuff in his pre-match stuff before Millwall. It was a little bit cryptic, but he's talked about some of the senior players really need to stand up and be countered, that they're the ones that are letting things down, and at least his actions carried through what he'd been kind of saying, and he did make some pretty big changes. We saw a couple of debutants into the team, and Fraser Preston, obviously, I think both of them have played like 45 minutes in the last week, haven't they? I think Matt Penny played 45 minutes at Sunderland, and Fraser Preston played 45 minutes at Brentford, but full debut for both of them. And it has to be said, both of them absolutely tremendous, really good performances. I'm going to throw Jordan Thornley's name into this as well, because I think it was his first start of the season, it might have been. Obviously, he played a lot last season, but I spent a fair bit of time just kind of watching, particularly Penny and Thornley at the back, because I've had this issue all season about where our leadership's coming from at the back. I think we'd all agree that we're not particularly convinced about Tom Lees in that sense, but we've got what we've got. Matt Penny has been playing, actual professional football now, first team professional football, for about 30 minutes, and he was barking instructions left, right and centre around that defence. He slotted straight into playing in the first team, and he had no hesitation telling everyone where they should be and what they should be doing. Same with Thornley, he was kind of organising things at the back as well. And that's not to say that Tom Lees wasn't kind of doing his bit as well, but it actually felt like a defence that were communicating, they were talking, and the goal that we gave away was really a bit of an individual error rather than anything else. We looked a little shaky last 20 minutes because Millwall brought on a striker who was about 8.5 foot tall, which is always going to cause you a few problems. But yeah, team selection was bold, it was risky, it worked, and huge credit to those young players because they did themselves absolutely proud. And I particularly want to mention, I just think Matt Penny has an absolutely incredible future ahead of him, and I think that between him and Ash Baker, they could make those two wing-back positions their own. I think they really could. They could keep the more experienced senior players out because they've got a lot of talent between them. Big well done to them for last night.
And you know what? It was great to see such adept and assured performances from players with very, very little experience. But actually, I think it was a great team performance that was led by those senior pros, and they're the ones that have really had to face the I suppose the criticism from the fans, haven't they? So the likes of Stephen Fletcher led the line with playing on his own up top for the vast majority of the time that he was there. I thought he was really encouraging. His fitness looks like he's getting right back to where he was. He caused an awful lot of problems, and I think he looked like he was playing as a forward again. I made this point on an earlier podcast that as a striker he's not quite there yet, but as a forward he's really doing the things that he needs to do, and it caused a lot of problems. You saw Tom Lees at the back was really back to that dominant form that he showed at his best, and he was a real leader there. Wearing the captain's armband but leading by example. And Marco Matthias. Now, this is something that made me think on the way home. He's been, it's probably unfair to say a bit part player, but he's had to wait for his opportunities throughout his time at Hillsborough. He's had to prove himself, and he's never really established himself as an A-list player at the club. Do you boys feel that he has always actually been a reliable performer? I can't remember him really having a bad game.
No.
Frustrating at times, but he's always delivered a 7 out of 10 performance.
I don't know. I think the Millwall game was probably possibly his best performance in a Wednesday shirt. I know he scored that goal at Leeds, and I can't remember how we played then because it was such a long time ago. But I kind of feel he kind of fits a little bit into the criteria of your Liam and Ramon Palmer situation, where you've got two different Marco Matthias. The Marco Matthias that got sent off against Fulham the last game of the season, just as we were going into the playoffs, was the Marco Matthias that I never wanted to see ever wear a Wednesday shirt again. Now, the Marco Matthias that played last night, who ran, worked hard, looked like he got some serious silky skills going on. That Marco Matthias, he can come back again. I'm happy with that Marco Matthias. So I think he's been far too up and down. And if he could actually be a bit more consistent, if he could play like he did against Millwall week in, week out, then he could really stake a claim to be a first team regular. His contract's up at the end of this year. You kind of guess as it stands now, he's got no chance of getting his contract renewed. Well, if he carries on playing the way that he did against Millwall, then who knows?
Fudge, do you feel like he's one of those players that let's think back to Jermaine Johnson. He's kind of like we say the Liam and Ramon thing. Is he one of those players that is so mercurial that on his day, and yesterday was definitely his day, he can really, really do things, but he can be so frustrating at times and petulant, as we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. That day he got sent off. What was it? Was it Preston? Did you say? I think he got where he.
It was Fulham. Yeah.
Yeah, that day he got sent off. That was him done with me. He gained the bin. And let's not forget as well, given the injury woes that we had last year and the problems that we had in terms of churning out a first team, and he still didn't really get a look in. Even then, made me think, well, probably Joss has done with him. Do I believe that? Squad rotation and giving the youngsters a chance and all that maybe gave him an opportunity to turn out on the pitch. Yeah, of course. You know what I mean? I don't think, had it not been for such a lot, a decent amount of games in such a short space of time, probably gave him the nod. But he's got a chance and he's taken it. So, fair play to him. I hope he keeps it up, because I think you're right. He has got that Jermaine Johnson, Jekyll and Hyde. I think I remember one game where JJ did this turn on the right wing, sent this guy flying, cut in on the right hand side, and absolutely spanned it into the crowd. And I think it was Megson turned around and went, "Yeah, JJ missed it, but only JJ would have got into that position to do that." You know what I mean? And yeah, I think that there's definitely an element of that with Matthias. There's days where it comes on and you go, "God, he was everywhere, wasn't he? He did really well." And then there's other days where you go, "Why do we even have him as a player? Why? Who's paying him?" You know what I mean?
So I think maybe one of the things that we need to also talk about is that Liam Palmer has now returned with the correct hair. He's had the wrong hair for probably upwards of a season now. He came back last night with the correct hair. And back in the day, your granddad used to say to you, "Well, you'll never amount to anything unless you smarten yourself up, get a sensible haircut, and stop being so daft." Well, that's basically what Liam Palmer did. That he's got the correct hair, and last night he played like the senior pro that he's meant to be. That was one of Liam's best games for us, I'd say. The system really suited him. He got to spend an awful lot of time up the pitch in space, but he did everything that he needed to, and I would go as far as to say that he was a real contender for man of the match. Would you agree?
Well, let's not go nuts, but yeah, he played all right. But I tell you what, actually, I think we've just decided. I think we've just found something out, just like what you've just said there, Eddie. So, like your granddad would say to you, smarten yourself up. You'll never amount to looking all shabby and that like that. But your nan always used to say to you, one day you'll fill out. One day you'll not be a skinny, awkward teenager. You'll fill out. And have you seen the size of him? What have him and Adam Reach been doing over the summer? They're absolutely bloody massive. In fact,
getting swole, mate. Getting swole.
Getting some gains, mate.
Protein intake.
That's it. They've been on the beans. Yeah, they've sat googling, realised they've taken a look at Jonah Hill and gone, "I can be like that. I can do that." And they've Adam Reach has got no neck anymore. He's massive. And Liam Palmer, his arms are as big as my thighs. So yeah, so what we've just realised is that Liam Palmer lives with his grandparents.
It's great to look good. And let's be honest, sensible hair, correct hair, Liam Palmer looks good. Adam Reach always looks good. A player who's not spent the summer getting swole was the player that won us the match, did it? Because Barry Bannon came up with the most Barry Bannon goal that I think he's ever scored. Fudge, he must have a foot like a traction engine. Am I right?
Shit. Yeah, I mean, seriously, I was watching on that god awful Sky thing. Now, if you live in Sheffield and you have the opportunity to go to the ground or to watch this thing on Sky, always go. Because have you ever, Eddie, you have children and you have a child that plays football, and have you ever been that doting dad that records his games? Yeah. So I got into trouble last season for live streaming some of Tom's games on Facebook on what I dubbed Sausage Arm Sports, because apparently it was a safeguarding issue because some of the kids that they were playing against were social services. Wow. So yeah, I go beyond doting dad to basically be my son's publicist. So yeah, and that's what this thing on Sky is like. It's the first time I've watched it. I had Brentford versus Villa on one screen, and then I had the Wednesday on another with the commentary. Now the fact they put commentary to it is great, because when you used to get an illegal stream the last couple of years with no commentary, it's on. People in the States. Big shout out to the Americast. Yeah. Sorry about all the crap you've had to watch. Now we've got commentary, so that's nice, isn't it? But it's all done on one camera. It's all done with literally somebody stood in the grandstand, in the south stand, just filming from left to right. So there's no replays, there's no close-ups, there's no Hawkeye to see if they crossed the line or any of that. It's like you live streaming your kids game.
And every time there's a break in play, he just inexplicably just zooms onto the corner flag and then zooms back again. Yeah, just get it focused, lad. Just get it focused.
It's fun, and then all of a sudden you'll think, oh Christ! I tell you what, if I put Sky Sports News on, So I put that on the laptop, and then on there you've got replays, you've got corners, you've got close-ups. You can see Barry Bannon's scalp. Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, well, why did they just? Why? I don't understand it. Is that it? Are they just? They're paying a commentator, they're paying a cameraman, but they're not paying a vision mixer. You know, somebody to just go on camera 4 and then onto camera 2. Do you know what I mean? It's incredible. What we're talking about?
So
Are we still recording?
Tell us about the goal, Fudge.
Yeah, lovely.
Was there a goal in there somewhere?
Yeah, top bins, mate. Top bins. There was something about rewinding something that I think I was going to go down. But yeah, I think I'd like to thank whoever put it on Twitter for me straight away. Thanks for that, because I got to then watch it over and over again. And that was glorious, wasn't it? That's one of them that when you're a teenager, you dream of smashing in. And it was reminiscent of Chansiri's first season, where I think there must have been a competition between some of the players to have goal of the season. So you had like Wallace and Bannon specifically just absolutely smashing thunder chuffers in. Do you know what I mean? So it's nice to see that's come back.
And then the second goal couldn't have been more of a contrast, could it? Because not only did it come so quickly after half time that half of the 23,000 weren't back in their seats. But it was just, if a centre back's going to score a goal from a set piece and it's not going to be from a header, then they're the only ones that they scored, aren't they? Where literally everyone sits and watches the ball, and then the centre back that made the run away to try and draw some defenders away then loops back round. He's like, oh, well, okay, then I'll side foot it in. And there was Tom Lees, there was Skipper to do it.
It wasn't a bad finish though, was it? It wasn't a bad finish at all.
No. He had to, because the keeper was coming out. He had to get it in that, the keeper was coming out near post, and he had to get it in there, didn't he? No, it was a fine finish, and that's absolutely the sort of goal that we need to score, because they're the ones that put us 2-0 up.
Let's not forget that he missed an absolute sitter in the back end of the first half as well, and he should have bloody scored. He owed us one. Do you know what I mean? Did he not? Yeah. Did he? Which one was it?
I am never, ever going to criticise the finishing of a centre-back. That's not what they're there for. Remember, it must have been the back end of the 90s when we put Des Walker up front for the last half an hour of the game that we were winning 5-0 or something like that. We put him up front for half an hour because we wanted him to get one goal for Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah. He must have had 18 shots, one on target, none of them troubled the scorers. So, not since Nigel Pearson scored, 15 goals in a season when we won the Milk Cup. I will never ever criticise a centre back for not scoring, even when it is a sitter. We had plenty of opportunities in the first half to put the game out of reach, but as the second half wore on, Millwall made, it wasn't quite a triple substitution, but it was 3 substitutions very, very quickly, and that really changed the game. I can't say that the goal was a direct result of it, because the goal appeared to be a direct result of one of our players wandering off to buy a programme. Is that right, James?
Yeah, it was. To be fair, Tom Lees completely leveled things up, didn't he? Because he scored a goal and then he just gave one away. So you think, well, fair enough. Yeah. You're gonna, if you're gonna give a goal away, make sure you score one first, which was fair enough. Can I just slightly backtrack a little bit, because I need to make 2 points about firstly about Barry Bannon's goal, because I was planning on saying from where I sit in the north stand, kind of, it's not quite level with the edge of the penalty area, but it's quite close to it. So I was going to say, do you know what, we had such a good view of it, and it was such a great goal. And then I thought, it's one of those goals that wherever you're sat in the stadium, it looks amazing. I can think, sitting on the Kop, you'd have had a great view of it, behind the ball as it went in. The south stand, the same. Wherever you're sitting, you get a great view when a goal is as good as that. Can I also say as well, Barry Bannon is, at the moment, he is the Adam Reach of last season. He is holding our season together. He's been the one consistent performer, game in, game out. And thankfully last night, everything went for us. And I know this might not be a particularly popular opinion, but I think, in no small part was down to the fact that Millwall were absolutely terrible. And that's what we needed last night. We needed an opposition that didn't really turn up. We needed an opposition a bit like we were to Brentford on Sunday, and we got it, because Millwall were dreadful. But you've still got to score the goals. You've still got to win the game, and it's what we needed. And Bannon absolutely ran play from the middle of the park, and he was superb. But yeah, bringing it back to that last 20 minutes actually was a little bit. It was a little bit scary. It was a little bit worrying because you kind of it's Wednesday. We've been here before when they got that one goal, and you're like, well, that's it now. That's it. Going to draw, aren't they? There was almost like a resignation, and it wasn't a negativity. It was just like we're so used to that happening, and then it was like the dying seconds of the game, and the ball's bobbling around in the area, and you're just waiting for it to hit the back of the net. Millwall bought about 37 fans with them, and you're waiting to hear every single one of them individually go mental. And being Millwall, they'll start, ripping seats out and throwing them all over the place. And that awful noise that they make, you're waiting for that as they get that last minute equaliser. And it's flipping Liam Palmer on the line, isn't it? Who saves us, almost like superhuman, blocks that shot. And what looked like an almost inevitable last minute draw, we get the win that we need that kickstart the season. And I think what you said earlier, Eddie, was absolutely spot on about the fact that on Sunday we lost as a team. Well, on Wednesday we won as a team, and we really did. Everyone put in a shift, everyone put in a performance. Everyone was playing for the team. They were playing for each other. They were playing for the fans. It was healthy. It was a real healthy performance. And if Sunday was a low point, then Wednesday gave us a real high point, and we needed that. And really pleased. Really good performance.
I think in years to come, we'll remember it as Liam Palmer's correct hair game. He came correct. With the hair, team performance, Wednesday won. And you know what? Even at 2-1, it wasn't the usual, air came out of the stadium, hair 'em, scare 'em, desperate last-ditch defending, chance after chance after chance. That one late on was probably their only real chance to tie it up. We looked, fairly in control. And, I appreciate what you say, James. Millwall did not really turn up. That they will say, and they have said, that was their worst performance. It was absolutely shocking. It's unacceptable. They played, like we did at Brentford, and we played like Brentford did at Brentford and got the job done. First 3 points.
That was a confusing link, but I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? A bizarre week. From all kinds of different emotions. But that week is in the books. Wednesday and moving on up. We're not talking about relegation. We're talking about where we go to next. I think there's a new feeling of positivity there. Even overnight, I think that the performance, the team performance, and the team spirit has galvanised the Wednesday fandom. I think everybody, every single Wednesday fan feels more positive today than they did probably at lunchtime yesterday, possibly excluding our own Victoria, who she was so giddy at the win. I don't know whether you know this, lad. She headed back to the Riverside Cafe to celebrate with Dickie, with James, and myself and Laura post-match, only to find out that we'd all gone home.
None of us turned up. Yeah.
Literally, not one of us celebrated Wednesday's first win of the season with her. She went there on her own. That said, if you're going to find yourself drinking alone on a school night, where would you rather be than the magnificent Riverside Cafe? Of course, I don't know whether I mentioned it. Like, they are sponsors of the Wednesday week, so why not try drinking alone there this week and feel the way that Victoria felt? I'm sure she seems quite happy today, so obviously it went quite well. Okay, so moving on, they were the matches from this week. A few more bits of Wednesday news as we move on. Probably the main one, and it's really a huge story, isn't it, given what has been talked about on the excellent Profit and Sustainability podcast, the Financial Fair Play podcast, the fallout from the transfer window, etc. Sheffield Wednesday announced that they have come out of transfer embargo. James, were you surprised to hear this, given everything that we'd kind of spoke about and everything that we'd mooted and feared over the last few weeks?
Firstly, just to echo your comments about drinking alone in the Riverside Cafe, apparently last night also Mavis from Coronation Street was spotted having a beer in the Riverside Cafe after after the match. Right. So yes, FFP. So this was talked about a lot actually on Sunday in the pub before the game at Brentford. Now again, I'm gonna go with unpopular opinion here because it's actually a load of shit. Because it's kind of PR, and for what's actually fair play to the club, they've done the PR right on this. This whole idea of right, we're out of embargo, everything's great again. Forget that. That's bullshit. That's not the case at all. Right, our finances are still being run by the EFL. They are still telling us what we can and can't spend. All they're doing now is saying, all right, you are actually allowed to bring in players, but there'll be a limit on the wages. There will be a limit. Possibly that limit is 0 on transfer fees or loan fees. So we're probably not allowed to spend anything in terms of actual loan and transfer fees. So it's all a little bit kind of, it's smoke and mirrors a little. Kind of the statement of, oh, we're out of embargo, everything's great again. Forget that. That's bollocks. That's not the case at all. You know, the EFL will still be effectively running our finances for us. It's a better situation than we were in a week before. There's no doubt about that. So I don't want to sound overly negative about it. I'm just trying to be kind of realistic and just saying to people, if you think that means we can go out and start spending, you know, £1 million on a player here, or so and so who's out of contract, well, you know, it's 30 grand a week, but you know, it's worth it because there's no transfer fee. Not a chance. That isn't happening. We kind of guessing. Me, Peter and James, obviously, as we do, we're kind of discussing this in our WhatsApp group over the weekend, and we reckon it's probably somewhere between £10,000 and £15,000 is kind of probably the limit in terms of a weekly wage that we're allowed to bring in. And if we want to spend more than that, we've got to sell. So I hope that didn't sound negative. I just kind of wanted to put in that sort of almost reality check there, just so that people kind of know, you know, if they think we're going to go out and spend a fortune, it ain't happening.
Go on, Fudge.
I've just come to terms with the fact that, bear in mind, you know, our group chat for this podcast takes up a significant amount of time, and you're in another group chat with James and Peter talking Mate, about the financial side of it. Christ, what do you do with your life? Or do you just mute them all the time? I don't really contribute to the Wednesday week one anymore. You know, I've moved on. You know, bigger and better things now. You got new rates. Yeah, you know, talking about spreadsheets and you know, wages and money and stuff like that. That's where it at. I mean, I've got to say, to be honest, and
percentages of beers.
Percentages of beers.
This one's poppy.
Do you know what? It's strange to say. I've just realised I've taken a beer out of the fridge to drink. It's 8.4%, and my previous beer was 8.3%. So you know, this podcast is going well, isn't it? We should do a late night podcast. We should come back to you in about 2 hours and just go. So James, how are you going? Yeah, I'm all right. Just some house rave in the background, or just you crawling around Charlie Brown's in your underwear. Honestly, this does represent. I walked down that street where I fell off the wall into the car park on Sunday. So, it was like bringing back all the memories. No, this is representative of just how bad a person I am. That before we started doing the podcast, I thought, oh, do you know what? I'll have a beer with the podcast tonight because I've not had one since the weekend. And then as I opened it, I thought, oh, apart from those 10 that I had last night, oh yeah. Conveniently forgotten about those.
You know what? One of the major symptoms of alcohol abuse is, James, memory loss. Memory loss. That's all I'm saying.
Sorry, did you just say something? I heard it and then it just went. No, I also just need to mention as well, this weekend, James Allen of FFP Specials and Al's Americas fame, he came down to Brentford with him, so it was an absolute pleasure to spend time with him. And certainly on the train on the way back, when it was just the two of us, it was really good to have a proper good chat about the kind of the financial side of it. Which was a lot more positive than probably the last FFP special was. We've just got to kind of see what plays out now. The good thing is that at least we can actually talk about like transfer gossip now, not idly. Like there's an actual chance that we could bring in a player or two.
Well, one of the huge things that comes out of having a transfer embargo lifted, and granted, James, I think the reality check is needed, although I think what you've just done there is given a load of PR spin to the FFP podcast to counter the PR spin that's coming out of the club.
No, not at all. However, FFP special number 5 coming next week may clarify one or two situations. No, that's not happening. Actually, that's not happening.
So I don't want to boil the ocean because we've got a podcast for this already. But removing the transfer embargo actually frees us up to discuss renewing contracts with existing players. So I think we're all fairly familiar with the list of names of players that are out of contract. Kieran Lee and Barry Bannon, obviously two absolutely key players who are out of contract at the end of this season, and the club have already said that they're open up those discussions. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got Matt Penny, you've got Nielsen, and you've got Fraser Preston, whose contracts all expire at the end of this season. You've got to assume that the club are going to offer them new deals, especially given the amount of first-team experience that they presumably will have by the end of the season. However, in the middle of that, there is then a chunk of players. I'll read them out, and then if Fudge, if you can, only one word, only one or two names. Who do we need to keep out of this group of players, and who can we just get rid of? So we've got Kieran Westwood, Daniel Poodle, Fox, Palmer, Abdi, Jones, Boyd, Marco Mateus, and Gary Hooper. Any of those essential to keep?
Gary Hooper.
Disagree. Sorry.
I would love to keep Kieran Westwood, but I think there's a lot gone off behind the scenes that we don't understand and we don't know. But I'm pretty sure he's probably played his last game for us. If he comes back, then I'll eat my words, and I'd love to see him back in the sticks. I really would. Fox, Abdi, who else was that? Poodle. They can all go.
Jones, Boyd. No, obviously. So what? Jones we've Boyd, got. I suppose on the bubble, you've got Liam Palmer, Marco Mateus, and Gary Hooper.
I'd keep Palmer as a squad player. I would. He's not my favourite, but like you said, there is a footballer inside him. Sometimes, and now he's.
It's Ramon. He's eaten him.
just as clearly identified that his size might have been an issue, so he's made him spend all summer in the gym. The proof will be in the pudding. Ask me this again about Liam Palmer in about 3 or 4 months. But Gary Hooper, I don't think has gone down the route of Alman Abdi just yet, where he's just broken. I mean, I think that Hooper is one of the cleverest footballers I've ever seen. He's super, super clever in his movement and the way he drags defenders out, and he makes space for other strikers as well. I mean, come on, James. We went to that. I think you were there as well, Eddie. We went to a game down at Fulham where he could have had an absolute hatful, and we could have had a hatful just by his movement. He was so clever.
But that was then.
You just worry about his age, though, don't you?
Yeah, I don't think that Gary Hooper will ever be the same player again. We've not seen him play for nearly a year now. And how can you contemplate giving a contract to a player that... I mean, when he was injured, it was almost like slightly innocuous. It was like, he'll be out for 6 weeks, and then it was 2 months, and then it was 3 months. It's now nearly 12 months. Like, is this guy ever going to get fit again? And if he does, is he ever going to be the same Gary Hooper? And even if he is... I don't know what any players are on, but if it's somewhere around the £30,000 a week mark, or kind of mid to late 20s or whatever it might be, is there better ways that we can spend that money than a player who's already in his 30s? We're going to be talking about giving him. I would have thought we'd give him more than a year. Maybe another club will come along and give him 2 years. He's going to go and do that anyway. I don't know. I'm not sure I can. I don't know. I wonder whether Hooper's Wednesday career is pretty much dead and buried now. And it hurts me to say that, because I agree with everything you've said. I think he's a great player, and I think he's been absolutely tremendous for him. And it's not his fault that he's got injured. But I think that we've got to concentrate on going in a different direction now for the future. And that direction is probably someone like Lucas João. And that means that Hooper in 30, 31, 32, which is the age he's getting towards. I just don't know. I don't know if I can see it.
What about if we, in order to pay, if we give that, let's play middle of the road type response. What about if we kept him and had him on a pay as you play type of deal?
Yeah, but someone will give him a 2-year contract, won't they? Because he scored goals in this league. There'll be a club that will say we'll give you a 2-year contract, because there's always a club that will do that.
So why would we not? Why wouldn't we not be that club? Why would we not be the ones to take up the player that scores goals? Have we? Well, really
because we're not. We don't. We're not. In terms of our wage bill, it's not plentiful at the moment. If we can save 25-30 grand a week on a player, then that allows us, quite a lot of flexibility then to look down towards kind of maybe a couple of League One players who are quite young, who've really been making waves kind of further down the football pyramid, that you think, all right, they could actually be part of our future. Gary Hooper, it pains me to say this, and I mean it with the absolute utmost respect, he's not part of our future, he's part of our past, and we've got to start looking towards the future now.
All right, so given that logic then, where do you sit with Kieran Lee? Let's say, for devil's advocate, for argument's sake, his contract is up at the end of the season. It
is up at the end of the season. Kieran Lee's contract is up at the end of the season, and he is. I think he's just about to turn 30 as well. He's roughly kind of late 20s. I think might be just about to turn 30. Exactly the same situation. I don't know.
We need to see 20 games out of Kieran Lee, don't we, this season?
Yeah.
For us to because he's going to command a wage that is commensurate with his experience, not so much what he does this season, but from what he has done in the past. He is a £20,000+ per week player on past performance. But unless we see 20 games out of Kieran Lee this season at the level that he has been, we'd be mad to offer him a new deal. And it's really, really sad, because he, probably more than anybody, could have been the player to be our Aaron Moy, for instance, and be that player who was the fulcrum of a promotion-winning team. But that window is closing, and a lot of these players that we've just mentioned were players who were in that window and no longer are. And especially with the financial constraints that we have. If we get 20 games out of Matt Penny or Fraser Preston or Jordan Thornley or all of these young players, they're going to have to be paid at £8,000 to £10,000 a year on a new deal. And I'm more than comfortable, if they're good enough, with sacrificing a Gary Hooper to get 3 players who are going to be there for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
You've got to look at it slightly differently, I think, to how we tend to do as football fans, which is you think so-and-so's a good player, offer them a contract. So, you would... at the moment, we need to be banging, like literally, I hope there's a club representative right now banging on Barry Bannon's front door with a contract saying, are you going to sign this yet? Are you going to sign this yet? Are you going to sign this yet? Because he's worth money, right? And every day that his contract gets shorter, he's worth slightly less money. And I don't want to think about worst case scenarios, but we've got to do, if our financial situation does not get better in the next 12 months, we need assets at the football club. If you give Gary Hooper a new contract, no one's going to come along and go, all right, well, we'll pay you $5 million for him. He's not worth anything for someone to buy, because he's not been playing games. Same with Kieran Lee. Doesn't matter if we offer him a new contract now. Doesn't mean that he's worth anything, because he's not played for 12 months, or he's played very few games for 12 months. So giving contracts to players like Lucas João, which we've done, which is brilliant business, because it means that he goes from, with 6 months left on his contract, he's probably worth $1 million, $1.5 million. He's now worth 3 or 4 million in the current market. So if we need to raise money quick, we've got a saleable asset. Exactly the same goes with Bannon. Those two are the two that we need to give a contract to. Unfortunately, the rest of them, I don't think that offering a new contract really makes much difference to their value. The other players that we need to be talking about contracts with are players like Reach, who's obviously got a value now. His value is only ever going to go up if we can give him a new contract. So, him, the goalkeepers, and the young players, they're the ones we need to be throwing contracts in front of, because their value is going to go up, and we've got to think in practical terms now. And if we start giving new contracts to players like Hooper and Lee without them proving that they can come back and play football games, then we are walking further into the mistakes that we've made in the last few years of giving big money contracts to players that unfortunately are past it.
Amen. So and João's contract takes him through to June 2021, and he is now a saleable asset. And I think he's probably the one player who's the archetype for that. that his value has now increased by dint of the fact that that contract has been agreed. I think to a lesser extent, the likes of Liam Palmer, who has shown that he can do a job at this level, he's almost like he's in a Lewis Buxton situation where we give him a contract, it gives him a value, but not necessarily a value that makes it a net positive to the club. And that's why it's important that we tie up the likes of Lucas Shaw, the likes of Barry Bannon, and assuming that the season goes well, the young players who come through and play 20 games, and every one of them, I would say every single one of them, if they play at the level they have played at thus far, then they will become saleable assets, certainly relevant relative to the amount of money that we are spending, on bed and board for them. But let's save that for the 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th FFP podcast, which I'm sure will outstrip the Wednesday Weekly followers within the next 2 or 3 months. Onto the rumour mill. So, because now the transfer embargo has been lifted, we can, in theory at least, get players in before the loan window closes. And there's been 2 names that have been mentioned quite a lot in the last 2 or 3 days. One of them very, very familiar, and we'll come back to him in a second. One of them, a guy called Michael Hector, who is at Chelsea. James, I assume that this is the standard archetype of young player who is good enough to get a contract as a pro at a top Premier League team, not good enough to crack the first team, and not enough of a prospect for them to loan him out. To League One for a season before bringing him back and blooding him in Chelsea. He's one of those players that gets stuck, like Sam Hutchinson a little bit, gets stuck in between the stools and ends up being a player that that is too good to rot in the Premier League, but not good enough to to have that potential. Pretty much. Is he a player that we should be looking at this point?
Possibly. I mean, he's got championship experience. He spent a season on loan at Hull. I don't know if it was last season or the season before. He joined Chelsea from Reading, where I think a good kind of 2-3 seasons he was a first team regular for Reading. Before that, he'd been out on loan here, there and everywhere, and not just in this country. I think he spent a couple of seasons in Germany as well. Played for I can't remember who it was, but a couple of teams in Germany. So he's actually, he's certainly no spring chicken. He's kind of like mid-late 20s. Plenty of experience. He's never played for Chelsea. That should be pointed out. But I think they spent a good kind of 5-6 million on him when they bought him from Reading, and then he went back on loan to Reading for the rest of that season when they bought him. So he's got championship experience. He is he is actually very similar to Sam Hutchinson in the respect that he's a centre half, but he can play a kind of a holding defensive midfielder role as well. So it is that back line where we've looked wobbly this season. So maybe bringing in someone that's got that defensive experience in this league is not a bad thing. Which probably brings us to the other name that's kind of been doing the rounds as well.
Yeah, and when we talked about Wednesday having an identity and having that player who can lead the back line in a way that maybe Tom Lee's personality-wise doesn't do, then Danny Bart, who of course was the hero of and arguably our best player in the League One promotion season. He's served his time at Wolves to the point where he played as captain for an awful lot of time there. He's been through that promotion. I think he will agree he's probably not Premier League quality at this point. Would it, for a Wednesday point of view, wouldn't it be great to welcome him back? But do we think that he could be the missing link, I suppose almost a younger version of Glenn Loovens, but more of a bastard?
Isn't it weird how Danny Bart's kind of yo-yo career has followed the fortunes of Wednesday and Wolves? Because when he was on loan at Wednesday, we were in League One, and obviously we won promotion. Yeah. The same season, Wolves were relegated from the Premier League. He went back to Wolves, and I don't think he played all that many games. I don't think he was particularly involved in the season that They then obviously double dropped. They went down into League One, and he became their captain in League One when they won the league with however many points. And he then kind of led them into the Championship, and over the course of 2-3 seasons, they solidified. He's led them into the Premier League, and at the same time, obviously we nearly got into the Premier League but didn't quite. And there were times we were linked with him. We were like, oh, we've moved on now. We're too good. Danny Bart's not good enough for us anymore. And now here we find ourselves whereby I think most Wednesday fans would be very welcome to the idea of him coming in because of the amount of experience that he's got, the leadership qualities that he's got, and all the things that come with him. And obviously he's known to us, he kind of like that. It wasn't just that he played well that season in League One. There was a real connection between him and the fans and the club. I remember, at the time on Twitter, his brother, who's a Wolves fan, became an adopted Wednesday fan for the season, and he was going to every Wednesday game, home and away. And it was just, there was a real connection between him and the club then. And I think that's remained even now. Whenever we play Wolves and Danny Bart plays, he always gets a good standing ovation from the Wednesday fans afterwards, just because of that one season. So I think we could probably do a lot worse, to be honest. What do you reckon, Fudge?
I think I agree with everything you've just said. I was intrigued to see how Danny Bart changed as a person as well. Like when he was in League One, with us, and when he was there with Wolves. I don't know if you remember, he was a big old stag. Now I remember, now bear in mind, I've talked about the physiques of men a lot during this podcast, so brace yourselves for another one. And he was huge. I mean, he had massive, great arms and shoulders on him. And what happened was, when he got out of League One, he lost all that mass and became much more of I was going to say an athlete, but as good an athlete you can be in the centre-back position, as it were. And that seemed to give him a little bit more dexterity. And he became a different type of player. He wasn't the big Lego brick that we had at the back, 6-7 years ago. He was quicker and faster and adapted to the way that football had changed from League One to the Championship and now the Premier League. And like you said, the affinity with the fans that he's got is for me, it would be a no-brainer if I was him. It would be a ready-made environment for him to embrace going into, which I'm absolutely all for. And I think you're right. He would be that voice to replace Louvens a little bit. And I'd be interested to see how that goes, because to me, given the sentimental lot those Wednesday fans can be, I think this rumour could be potentially how you say, bollocks.
Yeah, well, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, and the loan window is closing rapidly. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on it. So moving forward, Saturday, we're all back to Sheffield 6. We got the home match against Ipswich. This is an Ipswich team that no longer has Mick McCarthy. So Fudge basically has no interest anymore because Mick is no longer part of it.
No,
Ipswich,
I'm done with him.
You're done now. So if there is a team that has had a worse start to the season than us, it's definitely them. Not only have they lost 2, drawn 2, they got beaten by Rotherham, which obviously isn't going to happen to us. Don't be stupid. James, we really have to beat this lot and continue, this progression that we've shown from Wednesday night, don't we?
Yeah, incidentally, if you're looking for a team that's made a worse start than us, QPR played for, lost for, and Steve McLaren as manager. I mean, if you're a QPR fan right now, it is, you need to make sure that you lock your medicine cabinet at night just in case you get tempted. It's absolutely a must-win game. I mean, we went into this kind of series of these 2 home games, didn't we, in a short space of time. The logical thing, your head says it's got to be 6 points, but then your Wednesday head says, hang on, this is us. We'll lose both games. We've won one of them. It wasn't a walk in the park win. We had to earn it. Now we've got to go and we've got to win the next. We've got to win the second one of those. We've got Ipswich is a game we should absolutely be intending to win. Interestingly, of course, their manager now, Paul Hurst, who I don't know how commonly known it is, but he is a Wednesday fan. So he was kind of my sort of tip, my top of my list of who I wanted to kind of come in and replace Carlos. Obviously, that didn't happen. Great to see him in the Championship now. I think he's got a really tough job there at Ipswich because the budgets are tiny, the fan base is quite demanding, the players are maybe not quite what you need in order to succeed in the Championship. So maybe we're playing them at a good time. If we can turn in the same sort of performance as we did on Wednesday, then we should be able to. Well, I say we should. Hopefully we can pick them off.
Can I tempt you for a score prediction?
8-0.
Yeah, screw yes. QPR is bollocks. West Brom haven't got anything on us. 8-0. Fudgy.
I reckon it'll be a tighter affair.
7-0. 7-0. Fine. 7-0.
Okay.
Was that Lord Hillsborough just then? Is that what I think it'll be a tighter affair, and I don't think we're a finished product yet. I still think we're a couple of wins away, and I'm going to go 1-1.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. I think they will play dour football, stifle us, and the worrying stat that we've got is the fact that even when we're playing 5 at the back, we still seem to concede about 15 shots a game. Shots on goal, and I just think we can't keep them out all day. So I'm going to go 1-1. I should put my money on that, shouldn't I? Now I'll get good odds.
Do it. I know this one for me is going to be. It's one of those classic games that will be defined by the crowd's reaction to the way that we play. So if we get into them early and the crowd get behind, as they did last night, it was a good positive atmosphere. I suspect we'll roll them. If not, if things don't go great, then it could be a long and ugly day at the races. But I'm hopeful. I think we've got a 2-0 in us. Let's see. It's going to be interesting to see what team Jos Lukai puts out. Whether it's a return for New and Forestieri or Zhao and Forestieri. The presumptive. First choice strikers, and see whether we play 2 up front. But we shall see. So that's Saturday. Tuesday, we have the Milk Cup. It's Milk Cup time again. And this time we are at home to Danny Bart and his runaway Championship winners of last season, Wolves. They've not had the best start in life to the Premier League. And I would expect that they'll probably be resting some of their key players for the competition. Let's not boil the ocean here because it is the Milk Cup and it's early on. We don't really care about it, do we, Fudge? But what's she thinking? Do you think that we're going to put out a strong team and try and progress, or are we fully focused on improving our lot in the league?
I think we will put out a semi-strong team like we did against Sunderland, and I think they will put out a load of old shit, and we'll still end up probably losing 1-0.
Fucking Wolves at home.
We can't talk about it. Wolves at home, we do not talk about. Wolves away all the time. You're like, Wolves at home, no, gets 2 minutes. Anyway, so that is about it from us tonight, apart from always our favourite hashtag of the week, that being hashtag AskTWW. So every week, Owls fans can take to Twitter and ask questions about football or anything else, and there has been some anything else this week. We'll do our best to answer them. First up, James, I've got a question for you from another James Marriott. So this is at J James Marriott. So either he has a silent J or he was just too slow to get the Twitter handle. He asked, why do you wear 2 hats on your Twitter profile picture?
Yeah, it's funny you should mention this because there was a Twitter exchange last night between myself and the other James Marriott that did indeed me making the point of the fact that I just got the Twitter handle before he did. But after that, I felt like we kind of bonded over our the kind of things that we've got in common, which are basically a name. So I've got a feeling that me and James Marriott are going to become good pals as we move forward. The reason that in my Twitter profile picture I'm wearing 2 hats is because it was taken on this is it's a train in Germany, and it's what they call the Sonderzug. So it's basically like it's an away trip. It's for the fans of the away team. They charter a train for the last game of the season. So I went on this with a lot of St. Pauli fans last season, and it set off. I think it was about 6:30 in the morning. It set off from Hamburg to go to their last away game of the season, which was in I can't remember where, Duisburg, I think it was. Anyway, it took about 5 hours to get there. And basically, about 9 o'clock in the morning, I'd had about 8 or 9 beers, and I was dancing to Venga Boys songs in the party carriage of the train. I was wearing a hat. Someone else put another hat on my head, took a photo of it, and I thought, that's quite funny. So I set it as my Twitter profile picture, and I've not changed it since. And that is a true story, bro. J. James Marriott, hit me up. Let's be pals. Let's be pals.
J. James Marriott. Is that going to be his name now? You're just going to
J. James Marriott, yeah.
JJ.
He's the new JJ. The other JJ, he's gone. He's dead to us. This is the new JJ.
You know what? The best thing about the German language is that you can distill any story down to one word or phrase. So if anyone ever asks you that again, James, all you need to say is, "Die Sonderzug."
Sonderzug.
That's Sonderzug. So, Fudgy, for you, I've got a question from Montague Dangerous at Monty Dangerous.
Is this going to be about Little Mix or a Ford Montego or something? Or changing all the filters?
Right. It's way too easy for you usually. Right. So, knowing that you are physically allergic to serious football information and journalism, I'm going to read it to you verbatim. If SWFC have X pounds to spend before the close of the loan window, and it costs the same to sign a good loan player as it did to get 3 high earners in there last year as mutual consent off the books, for example, Jones, Abdi, etc., what would make better short and long-term sense? So would you take the short-term loss of a number of players to gain the long-term reduction in wages and help right now where we need it? Make a fucking joke out of that, dickhead.
Right. I'm assuming we're dropping what James said about we don't have X amount of money. This is hypothetical as it would be. I believe that spending this X money on 2 or 3 loan signings by jettisoning via mutual consent some other ones would be better for us until we can get the likes of Hooper back or Kieran Lee and get a fully fit Stephen Fletcher, a game fit Fernando Forestieri. I think some short-term round pegs for round holes is what we need in the near future, and to reduce the payroll going forward. There you are. What about them apples?
So Montague Dangerous, he ain't just a frustrated ex-failed boy band member. My man knows about football, yeah? You get me? All right? You come at me again, I will cut you.
Don't even at me, bro.
Don't even at me. You know what I'm saying? So finally, so I'll take the final question. It's from our friends at the Owls of Merrycast. Of course it is. They have a sartorial question about the pictures of Marco Matej in the Winter Gardens that featured in the programme Wednesday night. You'll have seen those on the website as well. He's quite a fashionable character. Of course, he's continental. He doesn't play by the rules. He's wearing very, very tight bleach blue ripped jeans. So they've asked, are they jeggings or just really tight jeans? Well, despite being a man on the cusp of middle age, I too like to sport a pair of stretch skinnies. In fact, that's what I was wearing for the match last night. They're very comfortable. I can confirm that Marco is 100% wearing tight jeans. It's just that his athletic thighs, calves, traps and glutes. I don't think traps, that's not right. Thighs, calves and glutes. They're stretching them to a point where they're effectively a second skin at this point. So I think that perhaps he's doing that to take attention away from his Ross from Friends uber white teeth. I don't know, but they're definitely not jeggings. They are tight jeans that have been worn to I think they might have been ripped because of the power of his thighs. Who knows?
Sorry to giggle through that, Eddie, but I've just seen what Dan Fudge has just posted on Twitter, which is related to Marco Matthias, and I don't even know where to start with it, because I've had some real fun with Owls Talk this week, and the pictures of I find the new programme pictures, which are just Wednesday fans looking generally uncomfortable in public places around Sheffield. Quite funny. And the Marco Matthijs one's particularly good because we made a joke between ourselves and Alstock that maybe afterwards what happened is he ran outside, saw one of the big silver ball things, and kicked it thinking it was a football, broke his foot, and put himself out for the season. It turns out there is a photo of him, just stood there admiring one of the big silver balls, which now Dan Fudge has turned into what is, by far and away the biggest giant cake ball that football has ever seen. I can't do it justice without saying just go to at Dan Fudge to see it. It's brilliant.
It's you might. Can we retweet it from the TWW cast account just to?
I'm doing it as we speak.
I don't have access to it, but yeah, it's very reminiscent of one of my new favourite accounts, McFadden's Cold War. So if you get that, it's right up there, lads.
So with that in mind, cake ball can finish any episode. That's all for the Wednesday week team for this week. We will continue to sample, review and evangelise about the greatness of the food and drink at the Riverside Cafe on Catch Bar Lane before and possibly after the Ipswich match on Saturday. But until then, you can catch us online. James, how would people go about doing that?
Just to absolutely clarify this, it is at James Marriott, not at J James Marriott.
For silent J's.
We are now best buds.
Fudgy, what about you, sir?
I'm at Dan Fudge on Twitter, and I'll be putting big balls of cake on other various photos. Stay tuned for that, kids.
And if you want to see many examples of my tight jeans, then at Sausage Arms on Instagram and indeed Twitter. Before you say anything, it's cold outside in a lot of those pictures, and I'm clearly experiencing some shrinkage. So with that image burned into your brains, I bid you adieu on behalf of Fudgy and James. Until next time, thanks for listening, and ta-ra!